Hello, I'm Lyle Rolfe. Talking to you today about the Red Ribbon Week, which is October 23rd through the 31st. During the annual Red Ribbon celebration, local communities hold events to increase awareness of the issues surrounding substance abuse and to encourage youth to choose a healthy, drug-free lifestyle. Many schools dedicate the week to drug prevention and education with special lessons and activities. The Red Ribbon celebration was the first awareness campaign to choose a red ribbon as its symbol. In 1996, 80 million children and adults representing all 50 states participated in the celebration. Celebration events have included parades, walks, runs, rallies, storytelling festivals and concerts. Local coalitions in Alaska used ferries to hold a red ribbon across the waterway ceremony. In Ohio, they renovated a vacant city lot and proclaimed it a red ribbon playground. In South Carolina, they bulldozed a crack house. The Red Ribbon celebration is held in honor of Kiki Camarena, the DEA agent who was murdered by the drug cartel in Mexico in 1985. His belief that one person can make a difference is the inspiration for the celebration and for all that the National Partnership Family Partnership does. We're going to be talking to two people today who are participating in Aurora's Red Ribbon festivities. They are John Lesney of Greenville, South Carolina, a postal letter carrier who is also a storyteller, author, teacher, and speaker, and Michael Scott Karpovich, speaker, author of Carroll, Michigan. First is John Lesney. He's the author of The Red Ribbon, an award-winning storybook published by the National Family Partnership. The book was inspired by the Red Ribbon celebration and is based on an original tale by its storyteller, John. John, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, as you mentioned there, I work for the post office. I'm a letter carrier and have been for around 20 years now. Originally born on a little island called Folly Beach, which is off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. Spent a little over 8 years in the Air Force, lived in California, Colorado, Georgia, Florida, Thailand, did a tour in Vietnam. Have a wife, a couple of kids, and Sunday school teacher, and just a variety of different things. Just your average everyday guy.
How did you become a storyteller?
I originally became a storyteller. My daughter was in the 4th grade in school, and she has some learning disabilities. And she was trying to remember some history things that happened to be, we're talking about Paul Revere's ride. And so I came up with the idea of creating a story, and this was well over 20 years ago now, about a mouse who helped Paul Revere and all the things that happened so that she could remember the events. And so she went to school and told her teacher, I can remember the story. My dad told me how to do it, and so she told the class a story that we'd made up. So her teacher asked me to come to the class and tell the story. So I thought, well, I'm going to do that, but I'll do it a little different. So I went down to the local theater group, borrowed a colonial costume, and popped out of the closet in the classroom and told the story. And then some other teachers heard about it, and they wanted me to come do this. And so one thing led to the other. And then after a few years, I joined the Storytellers Guild, and was one of the founders of the Greenville Storytellers Guild. And from that connection with them led to more things, and that eventually led to the Red Ribbon story.
Now tell us about the Red Ribbon, how you became involved in that.
Well, our guild every year does a community event of some sort. And see, I guess it would be in '92, one of our members worked with the local, it was Greenville Family Partnership, local drug prevention organization. And they asked us to possibly do a event for them. And so we said, yeah, we'll do a storytelling festival, and we'll center it around Red Ribbon. Really, nobody in the guild knew anything about Red Ribbon at that time, including me. And so in one of our meetings, they have a poster every year for Red Ribbon, and in one of our meetings that we were having, the lady, and this is the poster, the lady asked me if I would create a story about this poster. that they could use in the opening Red Ribbon celebration in Greenville. And of course the poster is some hands holding a ribbon. Well, I said, sure, I create all my own stories anyway because I have a terrible memory and I can't memorize other people's stories very well, so I created my own. And so I came up with a story, the Red Ribbon story, which has nothing to do with drugs at all, because I didn't want a story about drugs. I wanted a story about solutions. And so I told the story to the next meeting we had, and then the lady asked me to come and tell Carol Reeves, who was the director of Greenville Family Partnership and of National Family Partnership, the story. And I told her, and then a couple days later they asked me to go down to the governor's mansion when they did the state Red Ribbon opening and tell the story. And so I went down there and told the story. And then Gino Church, who works with the people who did the artwork of the book and everything, approached me and said, could he have a copy of the story? They were considering making a book out of it. And I said, yeah, sure, but I don't have it written down. So I went and wrote down the story. And about a year later, the book was out. And it came out in, actually, I think it's dated 94, but it was actually about a year and a half later that the actual book came out. And this is a copy of it here. And as I tell people, if you look at the center of the book, the middle of the book, right where the staples are, as a matter of fact, you see the original poster. If you cover the faces and everything, you see the original poster in the book. So Greg Ramsey, who did the artwork, spent about 1,000 hours, and the art's all done in pastel chalks. It's been in museums around the country for people to see the artwork. So.
Did you ever imagine at the time you started that this would become a book?
No, I never dawned on me at all. And I was coming back from Columbia, South Carolina, from doing the event with the governor, and I got a call on my answer machine when I got home and said, John, we need a copy of the story. And it was, like I said, it wasn't even written down. I don't usually write my things down, I record them. You know, so.
Now, up to this time, had you presented it much to school groups or just primarily the adult groups in your organization?
The Red Ribbon, at the point at which the idea of becoming a book had never been done, really had been done almost exclusively for adults. And I really actually do not consider the Red Ribbon a children's book. A lot of people do because of the format, the large size and the front pictures and all. But actually, I get more letters and response from adults and how their lives have been touched by the story in the book than anything else. I like to think that it's a catalyst for adults to realize that they can be involved in making these differences too.
So how is the book used then? How do adults use this book? Is it used by teachers? Or
well, the book is used by, it's amazing, it amazes me the variety of things that the book has been used for. The actual first use of the book was in Charleston, South Carolina. Well, actually, the story, it was actually before it was a book, was in Charleston, South Carolina by a guy who headed up the violence prevention for the high schools. And he wanted the permission to use the story in his program of violence prevention. And in the book itself, it has been used in everything from sermon series that churches have used for series and sermons, teaching, working together. Because, see, when I created the story, as I said, I didn't want a story about drugs. I wanted a story about solutions. So the story has absolutely nothing to do with drugs or any other specific thing. It has to do with people working together to solve problems. So those problems, if there's a problem, the book has the answer, and the answer is people working together in unison to solve that problem. And the theme throughout the book is that, okay, here's a situation, and by somebody stepping in, or some bodies, and maybe more than one, stepping in to solve the problem goes away because people care. And so it's used sometimes in a teaching aspect of the steps involved in solving problems. It's a variety. It's really hard to pin down to one thing because it has been such a across the board kind of thing.
So then, where did this lead you? How did you end up becoming a speaker and starting to go before groups of children and so on?
Okay.
How did that evolve?
Before the book, I was going into schools and doing. I try to do most all of my storytelling is teaching. Mm-hmm. Teaching. Some cases it's teaching science. Primarily, it's teaching life skills, decision making, consequences for actions, all those type things. I was doing that in schools locally and even some out of state. But when it came out, and the post office that I worked for, their diversity division, took up the project. They were the ones that funded the translation into Spanish, and they agreed to fund a 6 months book tour, which turned into a year and a half. So I was glad when that was over. But I traveled, I hit, in the year and a half, I was in 45 states in Puerto Rico. Everything from Indian reservations to senior citizen centers to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of schools. And obviously, the more you're around doing things, then the more people hear about you, and then the more and now with the advent of the internet being so popular, a lot of people find my website, or they'll do a search for Red Ribbon and they'll find, my name in relation to the book and stuff like that. So it's kind of snowballs for that way.
So that year and a half, the U.S. Postal Agency sponsored this?
Yeah, my local postmaster covered my salary, and in some cases, school districts or community groups would help by providing hotels and different things like that. But primarily, the post office through the local people in the different communities, and it was up to them, and they would go out and they would schedule schools in different places. And what they wanted to do, what the post office wanted to do, was to help people understand the post office isn't just this place to deliver mail. Mm-hmm. They are the community. You probably live on the same street with somebody that works at the post office in some form or fashion. They're the largest employer outside of the military in the whole United States. I mean, there's tens of millions of pieces of mail a day that get delivered. Well, that all takes a lot of people. And so they wanted the community to realize we're not just the people that deliver your mail. We are the community. And we want the community, obviously, for the Postal Service, if you have a drug-free community, a violence-free community, you have better employees. And so that was their motivation to become involved in it.
Now, how many copies of the book have been printed so far?
Woo, that's a good question. I would say initially, and with the last printing, I'm going to say probably about 60,000, I guess. Mm-hmm. Post office paid for the printing of, I think we gave away about 15,000, and they were the originals, which were the hardbacks. And then we, in English, and then we gave away about another 5,000 in Spanish. And then they print every year. And I'll tell you the honest truth, I really haven't kept track of it. I don't get any money or anything for it. It all goes to the drug prevention program. So I'm going to guess, I'd have to get actual numbers. I'm going to say probably about 60,000, somewhere around there.
And it's still being promoted. Your visit here to Aurora today is partially to talk about it.
Exactly. Sometimes last year I was in Ohio doing Red Ribbon Week, and what had happened is a teacher had gone down to North Carolina, and a friend of hers, I had been to her school about 5 years before, and she had one of the books, and she gave it to this teacher friend of hers that was down from Ohio. She went back up to Ohio, showed it to some people. They ended up getting a hold of me, and then I ended up there for a week doing programs. So it's just, these things are self-perpetuating in some cases.
Yeah. Now, you also teach classes on storytelling and writing. How long have you been doing this, and is that primarily for school-age kids or adults?
I do it for both, primarily school kids, and usually, a little bit higher grades, fourth and fifth up through high school. I also, I was the director of our drama department at my church for about 7 or 8 years, and so I incorporate a lot of the things in with it. We just finished a couple of workshops, but right before I came here at one of the local schools. And I try to I do a variety of workshops. Some of them are little short mini workshops, and some of them are like artists in residence things that last the whole week. And in those cases, we actually have the kids create stories and do different things like that.
What's your favorite age group?
My favorite age group is probably like about 5th through 8th grade. I worked with middle schoolers for about 12 years. I was the director of our 8th grade Sunday school at my church. And so I'm real familiar with middle schoolers. And I like the little bit older kids simply because I can get into some really meaty things with them. You can actually, I like doing the littler kids, but as far as actually being able to teach and instill ideas and motivate, that's the age groups I like the best.
Now, the little kids, that would be where it would be more storytelling than teaching?
Yeah, and even that, like for example, Stinky the Skunk. It's a story about accepting other people. Robbie Rabbit is a story about consequences for actions. So even with the younger ones, I'm teaching. It's just that I usually don't get specific on drug issues with the younger ones, which I might. And of course, it's not just Red Ribbon. I mean, I go places during Authors Week and Library Week and all. So there's a variety of different things on it.
Any idea how many kids have heard your messages over the years?
At this point, I would say probably close to 500,000. It was about 350,000 on book tour, and that ended 5 years ago. So it's quite a few.
What do you enjoy more, the teaching, speaking, or the storytelling?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I combine them all together. I enjoy workshops, but that's if I was going to hierarchy them, that's probably at the bottom of my list. The teaching and the storytelling are all in the same. They're all one. And so I don't really separate between the two. Now, I always have some stories in there that don't have anything, just maybe a funny story or a ghost story or something, but primarily all the stories, for the most part, are teaching. That's their whole purpose. And a lot of times when I finish a story, we'll have a discussion period where we go through, and on my CDs, I actually have, when I finish a story, I'll have a question and answer session that teachers can use where they can pause the CD and the kids answer the question and they start it back again and have the answer.
Now, after the book tour ended, how then did you work the kids' storytelling into it that takes you around the country now?
Not nearly as easy as before. I have a certain amount of vacation time during the year that I set aside. I always set aside Red Ribbon Week because I'm usually out of state for that. I try to reserve that for out of state things. And I'm on a rotating schedule, so I'm off different days of the week. I'm not off on weekends hardly ever. And so sometimes I can combine I do a lot of 2-day trips or 3-day trips where I'll fly to Alabama and do some programs for a day and fly back, and so I can kind of work around that a little bit.
Now, when did you write the kids' books?
Well,
what led to that?
What led to them was Stinky the Skunk, for example. I was in I want to say Alabama, and I was in a school outside of Birmingham where they were having a good bit of racial problems at the time. And so I wanted a story that I could use primarily with a little bit younger kids, because some things you want to begin teaching at a very young age that would teach acceptance of others. And so I kind of thought, well, okay, the least acceptable, and I do a lot of animal stories because they're non-threatening. You can tell somebody about an animal and you leave it up to them to transpose that into themselves. So you can say just about anything you want and without getting anybody's backup, or, they don't know you're talking about them. And so I wanted a story that would teach. And since the skunk is like the least acceptable of all the animals, I created a story where the skunk became accepted. His differences became inconsequential. And so that's how that story came about. Robbie Rabbit, I saw how many kids did not understand that there were consequences for their actions. Negative consequences, because in our basic new Disney age kind of thing, all children's stories almost always end with a happy ending. And I wanted a story that I could tell that kids could realize, hey, there isn't always a happy ending if you make some bad choices. And so that's what Robbie's like, which is quite interesting. This one is obviously the smallest little kind. It was actually done in a format so it'd be really inexpensive so that a lot of kids could have it. One of the first times this story was told by somebody other than me, it ended up in St. Louis in a senior high school classes time vault. Every 10 years, every graduating class does a time vault, and 10 years later, another class opens it up. And one of the guys went to the school and told the senior class this story as a joke, kind of like, okay, guys, sit on the floor, I'm going to tell you a little story. They liked it so much, and they said it had so much meaning to them, of the consequences for actions kind of thing, that they asked him if they could get a copy to put in their time vault. So you never know. You never know how different people are going to receive a story.
Now, are these books available where, like in a bookstore, people can buy them? Or
They used to be available at Barnes & Noble's. The easiest way to get them is through Greenville Family Partnership. And if anybody's interested that sees this, if they want to contact the Aurora Youth Department, is that what it's called? They can get them all that information. Or my website is my name, John Lasne, LASNE.com, and the information is on there also.
Okay. Any idea how many have been sold so far?
I really don't have any idea on those. I know that Robbie has become an extremely popular book with counselors, and people have been ordering those by the dozens and dozens. I really haven't. I don't have to ask a good question. I have to ask people that know that how many of those have sold.
Now, when did you write those two, Stinky and Robbie?
Stinky was about 90. It was the earliest, 98, and Robbie was about 95, I think. So
You've won some awards for your books. Tell us about those.
Well, the Red Ribbon has won a National Addy Award, which is an award for advertising, and tied in with the Red Ribbon promotional stuff. It's also won the Hellenot Keating Library and Synagogue, or Church and Synagogue Library Association Award. The book has also won, this year just won the Pegasus Award, which is an award for books that promote and teach storytelling. It can be used in storytelling as a teaching tool. I've gotten several awards for different things to do with it, but that's the book is done real well. It's got a lot of national. I also got In Canada, it received the Hemlock Award, which is an award that goes to publishers, book publishers, and printers.
Now, during your visit to Aurora, how long are you here for, and what will you be doing here?
I came in Sunday and went over to the theater and watched the high school kids put on a play, which they did a phenomenal job on. I was in schools all day yesterday, and we'll be today through Friday. I'll be leaving Friday afternoon and head back.
A full week here?
Yeah, full week.
You normally spend that long in a community?
Not usually in one community. Like when I was in Ohio last year, I was in one place for like 2 days and another place for 3 days. It just kind of depends on. I have been, for a week in a community, and usually that's when we're trying to do as many schools as we can do in one area.
Now, what age groups have you been meeting with, and will you meet with by the end of the week?
Well, let's see. Today we were with middle schoolers at one of the parochial schools, and elementary age. Some schools were doing all of the kids, K's through the, primarily elementary age.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your outfit.
Well, once again, as I mentioned, I try to do teaching within all the stuff I do. And of course, when I come in my costume, it really gets the kids' attention, and they want to know all about all the stuff. And so I use, my example, my tomahawk. I'm able to talk to the kids about the fact that, this tomahawk, which is a weapon of war, was designed for fighting. That's its purpose. It's turned into a peace pipe. And it's taken from a weapon of war into a weapon of peace. And so in the process, teaching them that, which the obvious is, there's no such thing as a bad gun or a bad knife or a bad tomahawk or a bad anything. It's what people choose to do with it. All of my messages are back to choice, choosing things. My whip that I have here that you can't really see, I use it to teach a science lesson about the speed of sound and how I'll ask the kids if they can see the whip when it makes the sound, and they think they can, but they really can't because it's traveling nearly 800 miles an hour when it makes the sound. And then I can segue from that into, well, guess what? Sometimes we think we know things and we really don't know them. And I have rabbit furs that I use, a brown fur and a white fur, to talk about the differences. We look at the furs and we see all these differences. What can we tell from them? Can we tell which one of these rabbits was the smartest? Which one of these rabbits could run the fastest? Which one? Well, obviously the answer to all those questions are no. And so then we go into that, and okay, we have people that are different colors, don't we? We have people that are different shapes, different sizes, have different kind of hair. And amazingly enough, sometimes we look at them and we say, I know something about that person by the way they look, when really we don't, any more than we know about the rest. So I use all those, and because it's different, the kids are really interested in it. And so that's the primary purpose of the costume, so that it's, when I walk in or they walk in, it's different. It grabs their attention and they want to know about it.
We've got just about a minute left. What do you see for your future in writing books, speaking, storytelling, etc.?
Well, I'm hoping to continue what I'm doing. I'll be retiring from the post office in about 3 or 4 years, and I hope to get back into a little more. I don't like traveling a whole lot anymore, but where I'm maybe doing a little more each month, and rather than trying to cram it all in 1 month. I'm working on a novel, and some CDs, some more teaching CDs. I don't know. You just have to wait and see what happens.
Sounds like you're having fun.
I am. It's fabulous, fantastic. I've met such terrific people. That's the one thing. Everywhere I've been across the whole entire country, I meet people that let me know that things are going to be better, that things can be better, and that people can make a difference. And everywhere I go, I meet tremendous, fabulous people.
Very good. John, we want to thank you for being with us today, and hope you enjoy your stay in Aurora.